Hey, solos. So, what is Walt Disney World? And is it big enough to go by yourself? Is there enough stuff to do if you go by yourself? So here's a little solo spoiler. It is giant. Walt Disney Resort is giant. It is the size of San Francisco, and there are so many things to do by yourself that it can be overwhelming. The point of this podcast is to make it a little less overwhelming, but there is just so much to do. So that even if you've gone to Disney World before, as a person going solo, you're going to be able to get so much more from it. Hi, solos. I am Samantha, and welcome to the Solo Magic Podcast, this new podcast that's about the magic of going to Disney World solo. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the layout of the property so that, especially if you are new to the Disney World property, you know what you're getting into. And this is actually just part one of part two, because the original idea of this particular episode was to talk about the different types of hotels you could stay at. But I realized that I provided so much preamble leading up to it. I was going to say there is so much preamble. There really isn't. You can just cut to the chase. But I had provided so much preamble about the history of the properties, but also the layout of the properties, that I thought I'm going to split this into two episodes. So in this episode, I'm just going to talk about the lay of the land. And in the next episode, which will also be out this week rather than to wait for one more week, I'm going to talk about the different types of hotels so that you can kind of choose which one you might want to stay at when you go solo. This is a new podcast, so make sure that you rate and subscribe. You can also go on Instagram. It's Disney_solo_magic on Instagram, and that's where I'll post pictures and things like that I reference in this podcast. So let's get into it. Okay, so what is Walt Disney World? Is it just Magic Kingdom? Now, we have, I live in Canada, and I live in Toronto in particular in Canada, and we have a Canada's Wonderland, which is a small amusement park. And when I've talked to people about going to Disney, they're like, so it's just a bigger Canada's Wonderland? No. No. Walt Disney World Resort, which is what actually the whole property is called, is, like I said, the size of San Francisco. It's twice the size of Manhattan, and it is a giant, giant piece of property, which might sound really overwhelming if you've never been before. And in all fairness, it can be overwhelming, but it isn't designed to be overwhelming necessarily. Everything is there for you. It's not like if you travel to New York yourself and you have to figure out all of these different elements about transportation and safe neighborhoods and places to eat. And if you ask someone, they're like, what are you doing? Just get out of my way. It's not like that. It is, this big giant city, but it's a city that is designed for you to get to where you need to go, to spend money, to eat, to sleep. It's designed to do all of those things. So especially if you've never traveled alone, it's actually kind of a good place to get to know yourself as part of a new place. So in the last episode, in the very first podcast episode I posted, I talked about that one of the key things about traveling by yourself is that you get to know yourself a little bit, and getting to know yourself in a new place is really special because you are problem solving, and you're trying to figure out who you are in this space. And Disney World is such a great place for that because it is big. There are so many things to experience, but it's also a very safe, and I mean safe in terms of not getting things stolen or not getting assaulted, but I also mean safe everyone is there to kind of protect you and take care of you. So you need to think of Walt Disney World Resort essentially as a city-size hotel. That's actually a really, really important element of thinking about where you're going. So when Disneyland, which is in California, when that was built in the 1950s, Walt Disney had this much bigger vision for what he wanted. And he wanted this really big space so that when people went to the amusement parks, at this time there was just the one Magic Kingdom, they would be immersed in this spot away from the hustle and bustle of regular life. But he couldn't get the money. People didn't really believe in that. He could hardly get the money for the park itself. So to get money for like space outside the park in case they wanted to build a hotel was so far out of reach. Now Walt Disney was right, whereas the funders were wrong. And so when he and the Walt Disney Corporation started to think of the second park, one of the main aims was to have enough space that they could do whatever they wanted with. They could do their whole vision with. Walt Disney wanted to develop a whole city, which is now called Epcot. It looks a lot different than his original vision. But the idea was that it was going to be very, very big. And they started to buy up all these parcels of land. And because they didn't want people to know it was the Walt Disney Company that was buying up all these parcels of land, they created all these fake companies and fake names. And there's this whole really interesting history about that you can look up. And on Main Street, USA, the main street in Magic Kingdom, there's a lot of references to this history in the names and things like that are etched onto the different fake businesses that are along that street. But they were able to buy all this really cheap swampland, essentially, in Orlando, and bring it all together so that Walt Disney World could be this big immersive city. And when you are taking transportation from the airport to Walt Disney World, you will know when you hit the Walt Disney World resort property, because the landscaping on the street, on the highway, just gets better. Everything just looks cleaner, brighter. There's a remarkable difference. And that's because when they set this up in the 70s, they also set up its own, it's not a township. Can't remember the exact name that it's called, but it is a particular legal entity that controls Walt Disney World resort property, which means that they take care of things like garbage pickup and the fire and all of this stuff, like fire protection. Now, the conservative governor a couple of years ago took away that kind of privilege or that right or that organization for political purposes. So I don't know, we'll see what happens to that. But anyway, it's important to know that it was designed for a city. And so when you're visiting, they designed that for you to go to a city. So yeah, does that seem overwhelming? Perhaps, but if you recognize that it's meant for you to travel from A to B and B to C and C to D, then you should take your stress down a little bit. So there is tons of transportation options throughout Disney World. Mainly there are buses, and these aren't city buses that you have to pay for and that are dirty and that there's some weird person sleeping in the back. No. These are Disney buses. They're free. There are spots to get Disney buses at every single resort, at Disney Springs, which is a shopping, food, and entertainment district, at all the parks. The bus system is great. Sometimes you have to wait, sure, but whatever. When you get on those buses and they're air conditioned and you can get a seat, you're like, oh yeah, this is great. Bus drivers are always friendly. It's safe driving. And sometimes and there's Wi-Fi on those buses. And sometimes when you're on the bus, it's just a nice sit down break until you get to the next thing. There are also boat transportation between a few places. So like I said, the Disney Springs area, which is a shopping and dining and entertainment district, you can take a boat from a couple different resorts to Disney Springs, which is kind of cool. There's a couple resorts that are close to Magic Kingdom. You can take a boat from those resorts to Magic Kingdom. There's a couple resorts that are close to Hollywood Studios and Epcot. There's a boat you can take between those places. And even if you're not staying at those resorts, you can still take those boats. Disney boats are my favorite. I love Disney boats. I always make sure to do one boat trip on every every trip that I go on. And then there's also the Skyliner, which is a new form of new-ish form of transportation at Walt Disney World. It's an aerial gondola style transportation system that takes you from a couple different resorts to Hollywood Studios or to Epcot. It's, like I said, up in the sky. It's really peaceful. It's really, really peaceful. Check on Instagram. I'll put in the stories a reel that I posted actually last year that's just like Disney Skyliner ASMR. Like, it's just such a peaceful like area to go and by yourself. Sometimes you get a gondola by yourself. Sometimes, especially as a single person, they'll put you with a party, like, oh, this family has 4 people in it. You're by yourself. You can go in the gondola by yourself, or you can go in the gondola with them rather than by yourself. It's never a problem. I always try to make conversation. It's nice to meet people. So those are the 3 main transportation options. If you were like, no, I'm just going to walk. I'm just going to walk from my hotel to the park. That's fine. I don't want to figure out the bus system as a person by myself, or the idea of going in the gondola in the air is kind of scary to me, and you're like, no, I'll just walk. You can't. Sorry, but you can't. There's a couple hotels that you can walk to 1 or 2 of the parks, but generally, you can't go from All-Star Sports to Magic Kingdom. You can't do that walk. So it's, yeah, don't even think about it. You're going to be doing walking. Let's just be very clear. When you go to Disney World, you will be doing walking. I can tell when I've gone to Disney World when I look at my Apple pedometer by seeing when there's these giant spikes of steps, because I'm like, oh, that must have been a Disney vacation, because look at those steps in comparison to my normal walking. So again, know the Disney transportation is there for you. All the cast members, every single one of them, can answer any questions that you have about the transportation system. And it is meant to get you back home, or like I said, or back to the park. So if you stay at the park and the park closes at 9 and you're like, oh, I need to get out and catch the bus at 9, don't worry about that. The buses usually run an hour, sometimes even an hour and a half after the park officially closes. So it will get you back to the resort. The other option are Lyft and Ubers. Now, there are Lyft and Uber drivers that just do the Walt Disney World resort property. They're used to these $5, $10 rides. Usually they're very friendly. The cars are very clean. I don't particularly like Lyfts and Ubers generally in my daily life, but they're definitely a good option, especially if you're going in between resorts for a dining reservation or something. And if all of that sounds new to you, don't worry, I'll cover a lot of that in other videos. Disney also has its own Lyft service, and they're called minivans, and they are the cutest cars you've ever seen. They're like little SUVs, and they are red with white polka dots, and they're really, really cute, and they are really, really expensive. For my birthday last year, I was with a couple family members, and I was like, okay, we're going to go from our resort to a park, and it's so hot out. Let's just take a minivan, because it's my birthday, and we'll splurge. And a regular Lyft was $8, and then the minivan was $32. So yeah, we're not going to do that. The minivans have up-to-date, the latest in not security, but safety. That's what I'm looking for. What are they called? The things that you put kids in. Car seats. Yeah. Car seats, things like that. All of the drivers are actual cast members at Disney, and so you can ask them a ton of questions and learn about the parks. But you're kind of paying for that safety car seat. So if you're traveling by yourself, you don't need a car seat for an infant, I assume, right? So I don't know. It's not super worth it unless that is something that you want to experience, or that is definitely in your budget. I'd want to spend money on other things, but that's just me. Okay, so what have we covered? Disney is huge. It's very big in the transportation system. Hotels. So there's 25 hotels at Disney World. Which one should you choose? Well, there's three hotel categories: value, moderate, and deluxe. And in the next episode, because this is going to be a two-parter, I'm just going to talk about those categories. So listen to that. There's also good neighbor hotels, and I'm using this in like air quotes. I don't know why they're actually called good neighbor hotels. And those are hotels that Disney doesn't run, but they are technically on Disney property. And sometimes they get the same types of perks that Disney resorts, Disney hotels do, like early morning entry, for example, into the parks. I have never stayed at any of them. I've stayed at one, sorry. I've stayed at the Swan. It wasn't a great experience, and I much rather be like directly in the Disney bubble. But, and to be honest, as a solo person, I think that there's an extra layer of safety to be at the Disney resorts like at a Disney hotel, especially, and again, I'll cover this in the next episode, but when you're staying at a Disney hotel, all of the charges, like all of the charges can be connected to your ticket, connected to your room key. So you don't need to bring your whole wallet with you when you're traveling, like in the parks. You don't need to bring a ton of different payment options. That's what your Magic Band, like the bracelet that you have, or your phone, if it's all connected on your phone, that's what it does. So when I stayed at the Swan, this isn't why I liked staying. This isn't why I didn't like staying at the Swan, but the Swan, because it's a good neighbor hotel rather than a Disney hotel, it's a room key and it's your wallet when you're out in the park, right? Like they are separate. They're not together like they are when you're staying at a Disney hotel. And so I lost my credit card. I had to bring my credit card with me when I was eating and drinking, and I lost my credit card. And so I got really screwed over. It was a tough couple days. And then we actually switched over to the Disney, Pop Century. Actually, we switched over to Pop Century because we were going to add a couple days to our trip. And they were so accommodating when it came to understanding that I was getting a new credit card chip. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I have some cash. I'm Canadian, so I didn't bring American cash, like a lot of American cash. But I was like, I'm just, worried about how I'm going to pay for lunch, And then the cast member at Pop Century was like, oh my God, we don't want you to worry about anything when you're here. You're here, you're at Disney World. Don't worry about anything. And then she pixie dusted. And pixie dust is when you get like an extra special perk, like a little magical perk that you can't predict, you can't ask for, you can't anticipate. Then she pixie dusted the two of us, there were two of us on that trip, with lunch at the restaurant at Pop Century. And it was like, right, hashtag Disney magic. At the Swan, they were like, we don't care. And at Pop Century, which is a value resort, they were like, oh, no, please don't be upset. Like, don't worry, you're going to get your credit card. We're not worried you're going to not pay us. Here's lunch. Have a great day, right? Like, Disney property, so much better. But as a solo, just because I have that preference, you might have a different preference. And as a solo, you do you, boo. Like, that's why you're there. When we're talking about Disney parks as well, it's not just Magic Kingdom. There are four huge parks. There is Magic Kingdom, where the castle is, like the OG park. Then there's Epcot, which has a couple like really new things that are really cool. They have a walkthrough, a Moana walkthrough that's like featured on the water cycle. There's a new roller coaster. It's not called a roller coaster. That's like old school language. There's a new ride, the Guardians of the Galaxy, which is really fun. But the main thing about Epcot that I love is that they have something called the World Showcase, where you can walk around this big, human-made lake, and there's all these quote-unquote pavilions. There are these giant areas that are featured in all these different countries like Canada and Norway and Mexico and China and Morocco. And you can go in, you can explore. It's so beautiful. They all have food and drink options. Epcot has 4 different festivals every year, in January, in the spring, in the summer, and fall, and then again in December. And all of those festivals have different food options and entertainment options. And like, oh gosh, I love Epcot. And as a solo, like just spending time in Epcot is just wonderful. I'm going to do a series in which I'm talking about all 4 of the big parks on their own and some like things to think about if you're solo. But that will be a little bit later. The next park is Hollywood Studios, formerly MGM Hollywood Studios. You can tell how old I am by the fact I just want to call it MGM Studios. And that's where the Star Wars stuff is. That's where Toy Story Land is. And also Sunset Boulevard and like all these vintage touches. Because I'm not really a ride person, because I go to Disney mainly for like food and vibes, Hollywood Studios is my least favorite park. I love the Sunset Boulevard area, all the vintage stuff, that's really great, but personally I don't care about Star Wars, so I'm not super interested in exploring that land, and I don't really care about Toy Story either, so I kind of skip that. And here's the thing, solos. Because I go solo, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I like versus what you like. Like, you like it? Go do it. That's super fun. Personally, I don't like it, so I can go a whole trip and not do Hollywood Studios. The 4th park is Animal Kingdom. Animal Kingdom, sometimes people think of it as just like a half-day park. You can certainly spend the whole day, but it closes earlier because it has a huge safari in which you can go in this vehicle and see safari animals. You can see elephants, you can see giraffes, you can see zebras and wildebeest, and it's, oh my god, it's so cool. There's so much foliage in Animal Kingdom. It's, I don't know, to me it's one of the best parks to just, like I said, just do vibes. Like, I'm just thinking about it now and I'm like smiling about how serene it is. Yeah, Animal Kingdom's really special. I don't think it gets as much love as it should. I mean, actually, I think a lot of people say that exact thing. But Animal Kingdom doesn't get as much love as it should. There's this restaurant. It's a signature restaurant, which means it's quite fancy. But attached to it is a bar lounge called the Nomad Lounge. You might hear a lot of people talking about it. It's like half indoor, half outdoor. It has some great food. If you sit outside, you have a view of the river. I don't know. It's just gorgeous. It's so gorgeous and so relaxing. Okay, so those are the 4 parks: Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Hollywood Studios, and Animal Kingdom. And I didn't mean to do this, but I did say those in the order that they opened. There's also 2 water parks, Blizzard Beach and Typhoon Lagoon. Now, a cast member that worked at the water parks told me that Blizzard Beach is more for what she said, the littles. She said that it's more for like younger families. And that if I was to go, I should go to Typhoon Lagoon. Now, she might have thought because I was an adult, I'd want to do like fast things. And I was like, no. If I'm going to go to a water park, I just want to like lazy river it up. Like, that's all I want to do at a water park. I don't think I have been to the water parks. If I have been, it would have been when I was a child, like 30 years ago. So, I don't know, depending on how popular the episodes about the different parks are, maybe I'll also do the water parks and let you know, solos, what the experience is like going solo to the water park. Are you worried about what to eat or what to drink? If you go to Disney solo, you shouldn't be. There are over 400 places to get food in the Walt Disney Resort property, so you need to take advantage of all of them, like every single one. It doesn't matter how far, like how long you go for, make sure you check all 400 spots out. Seriously, there are so many good food options at Disney World. I had a friend who was a vegetarian, and I sent her a list of vegetarian options at Magic Kingdom, and this was after her trip, and she's like, "Oh my God, I wish you sent this to me last year because all we did was eat fries and the fries weren't even that good." Yeah, like you can go to Walt Disney and just eat like standard amusement park food, but oh gosh, solos, you really need to like open your mind for a whole new world of foods. So all the resorts have restaurants. There are, like I said, when you go to Epcot, there's food festivals with food booths that always have these great like bite-sized things that you can try. There are sit-down restaurants. There are quick service restaurants where you get your food at a counter, like a fast food restaurant. There are snack pavilions where you can get an ice cream or an egg roll. Like there are so many places to eat. And so as a solo person, you need to think about like, what foods do I want to eat? Like, do I want to eat at a restaurant to sit down? Do I just want to take something really quickly? Do how and what do I want to eat? I'll do a whole episode about bars and restaurants, and I know for going solo, sometimes it feels really awkward to go and eat by yourself alone. Don't worry about that. Like, don't worry about that. I mean, I recognize it's something that you can think about, but you shouldn't. You should feel free to like lean in to whatever you want to do. And if you want that fancy dinner and it happens to be at a restaurant and you are eating by yourself, hey, so be it. No problem. Enjoy. But if you don't want to have like a formal trip and you just want to pick something up, then you should know about all the different options. So if you want some like tacos, like fun little easy tacos rather than, I don't know, dog nuggets, then you know you can walk 10 more minutes and you can get some tacos than getting corn dog nuggets, which again, you could be into. No judgment. You do you, boo. That's the point of a solo vacation. I was at a bar. I don't drink myself, but the bars slash lounges are always have some really great food options. And my last trip, I was at the Port Orleans Riverside Lounge, and I ordered pimento cheese balls and then like chicken wings. And these aren't foods I eat on a normal basis. And I, like, every time the waiter came back, I was like, oh my God, this is so good. And he's like, I know, it's so good. And I said, well, I'm a little bit more hungry. Like, what's something else I should order? And then he suggested something. And again, as a solo person, like, I was able to eat as much or as little as I wanted. I could broach a conversation about what else I could order. It was really great. So I don't know, how many of the food places have I been to? Oh, I don't know, probably like a quarter, because there are so many. And I try to go to new places, and I try to go to like sit down restaurants and the lounges. But the lounges are my favorite. And I think you'll find that with a lot of solo people, they also really love the lounges. So again, there'll be a whole episode on that. Oh my God. All right. I have covered so much. I've covered transportation, the size of the property, the types of hotels, but again, there'll be another episode that'll be out this week as well. The types of food, how many parks. Oh my God, you see? You see? Like, now, I don't want this to intimidate you. I want it to be the exact opposite. I want you to be excited about being able to explore all this on your own. Because if you were going to a place that had this many hotels and that many parks and that many restaurants on your own and so many different transportation options on your own, it would be very overwhelming. But at a place like Disney, because it is all geared towards the like your own enjoyment, it doesn't matter how big it is, because you're never going to see it all. Don't expect to. And that's why like going back multiple times is wonderful. But it also allows you to be able to, like I said in the last episode, have the flexibility to explore things on your own, be able to do some self-discovery about what are the things that you like, be able even to like have some like opportunities to try new things, or to like do a little Disney therapy by being in these situations where you're kind of like testing the limits of your own kind of curiosity or your own interests. And know that even though you might do things differently in another trip, if you are open to exploring all it has to offer, Disney World has to offer, you can't really have a super bad trip. Or I'm trying to think of another way to say that. It's like you can't make the wrong decision. You might make a different decision the next time, but in a solo trip, you are learning so much about yourself and about the property and all that stuff, that it's all just one big kind of learning experience. And that is fun on its own as well. Oh, okay. I can't wait for the next episode. I feel like out of breath talking about how big the property is, because to me, it's really exciting that you have this whole playground at your fingertips to do whatever you want with. You don't need to drag someone along with you. If you were like, oh, I want to spend the day at Magic Kingdom, but then I want to go look at the zebras in a nighttime safari at Animal Kingdom Lodge. See, that's something you can do. Have you ever done that before? It's excellent. Okay, so this is a new podcast. Like I said, make sure you follow me on Instagram, Disney_solo_magic. Make sure you rate and subscribe and connect with me on on Instagram, on the social media platform, because I really want to hear from you. Like, what is something you wish you knew about the property before you started going solo? Now, like I said, there's a new episode this week as well that just focuses on the 3 types of hotel categories, so that you can decide for yourself which is the best hotel or hotel category for you. So I can't wait. I'm so excited to build this community with you all as solos. So, all right, until next time, I will talk to you then. Bye.